Strange Creatures 3. William had retreated into a narrower, dead-end passage. He stayed a few steps ahead of Emily so that his movements wouldn't get in the way of her and neither would his. The creatures were running close to them, and they started screaming. Their screams were annoying, and they're making William angry. These things were acting like monkeys, screaming and throwing little stones. The damn things were trying to provoke them. At the moment there were 12 of these bigger creatures, but a few others were hiding behind them, probably almost 100 in all. These larger versions of the others were more robust and taller. The small ones of before were like children of 7 years in height. These already reached the size of a tall adult from the north, but even so, they were much thinner than humans. Why don't they attack? Emily, who was on guard, asked as he watched the strange action of these creatures. They're smart, they're provoking us, they want us to attack them, William responded while keeping an eye on all the movements of these things. Emily remained silent. She was able to understand a little about the behavior of these creatures and what their purpose was. Damn them! Emily screamed as he picked up a rock and threw it at one of them. The creature was hit on the forehead and staggered a little and then started screaming louder and was ready to attack. Why do they want you to attack? Danny, who was hiding behind Emily, asked. She was scared of these monsters, but she felt safe with her friends. William and Emily remained silent and did not look at her. Something clicked in Danny's mind. They want me. She spoke vaguely. They want me, don't they? She speaks with a trace of fear in her voice. That's really it. For some reason these creatures had a strong interest in Danny, and they were trying to drive William and Emily away so they could get to her. I don't know, but don't worry, we're here. William responded as he picked up a rock from the ground and threw it at one of them. Unlike the small rock Emily threw, the rock he threw was big, and so when he hit one of those creatures over the head it opened his skull and brain matter was scattered in the air. The creatures were surprised by this event and began to drag their brother's body. Soon they ran and attacked the group. They no longer wanted to provoke. These creatures were clever, but still dumb beasts, and without an organization, they ran for William to kill them with his sword. William held his short sword tight and tidied up his posture. Everything Sir Roderick taught him would be used now. The creature at the front leapt William. With a quick movement of the sword from top to bottom and moving his body to adjust his posture to the blow, the sword hit the creature that was cut in 2 parts, and he prepared for the next ones. The next ones arrived together and there were 3. William could make a horizontal stroke, but he would risk breaking the sword and even if it wasn't a big problem, he would prefer to take another action. With a circular leg blow, William hit the one in front, sending him flying toward the other, causing the 2 of them to hit each other and get in the way of the next ones. The third managed to deflect, but lost speed and was greeted with a quick sword stroke that took his head off. After beheading the third, William kicked him toward the group that was running to him, in a way to stop the fast advance. It was necessary to diminish the possibility that one of them could pass him. It was partially effective, but there were several running, about 30, and only a few were obstructed, the rest without worrying about their brothers, running over, trampling and killing those who fell. These things were fast and agile. Luckily they weren't very strong or resistant. William could kill them with one blow. His punches or kicks were more than enough to kill them or at least incapacitate them. Unfortunately, the tunnel was wide enough for some to pass. By that time there were more than 70 of them, apart from a large number of those who died and slowly built a wall between them and William's group. These things were played without worrying about their lives. They wanted something and that thing was probably Danny, but to their misfortune, when they managed to escape from the god of death, the few who passed were faced with the Lady Death. Emily may have been much weaker than William, but she was a trained warrior from her childhood, and with the improvements, after they saw a Lycan, she was a goddess of war, even making Athens jealous of her. With her black leather clothes glued to her body, Emily was incredibly sexy, but the function of this outfit was protection not beauty. It was leather to allow her to be agile and she was. Her favorite weapon was the long sword, but since the space was small, she wore a short sword like William, but unlike him, she wore a small shield. The creature that passed ran unrestrained in her direction. Emily with a decisive blow beheaded her. It was her favorite blow. A quick, strong blow to the neck, and then he struck the shield to throw his body out of his way, or against another opponent, and continued with a new beheading. Her service was much lighter than that of William, who stood like a farmer cutting wheat, and like a Spartan kicking Persians, every second a hurricane in human form. She was much more majestic in her actions but still fearsome. Danny, seeing these 2 powerful warriors in front of her, ended up losing her fear. She was a little nauseous from all that blood, guts and bodies torn to pieces, but a fire burned inside her. She wanted to be able to fight too. She held tight the little dagger she used as protection and hoped to have a chance to attack something. Even if some part of her was still shy and stopped her from doing such madness, she was looking forward to getting strong. That's what she wanted. She wanted to be strong for herself. Her eyes glowed with delight at the glorious performance of William and Emily. They asked one of them to teach her. William and Emily are so beautiful, I hadn't seen. Danny thought vaguely. In the end, heroes and heroines have a call for more. Heroic acts are always attractive. William was kicking the last of those things. The creature flew like a ball, and the head that hit the wall exploded like a watermelon. It was cool, William spoke with a little joy, a Lycan and its habits. Emily, who had a little smile on her lips, couldn't help but agree with her head. Very disgusting. Danny, who was back to normal, ran near the wall to vomit to be dinner. William and Emily laughed. You'll get used to it. Emily approached Danny and tapped her little sister on the shoulders. She tried to support and encourage her. Danny looked briefly at her friend and then went back to her job. Her face turned pale. I don't want to get accustomed to it. Danny complained while vomiting. Girls, we have company again. We need to get out of here. William spoke as he gazed in surprise at the thing crawling toward them, toward the corpses. Emily and Danny turned and saw a creature that released a blossoming light and had a large, long body covered with something like stones. 2/3. I'll wait a little longer to choose the name Laughing Face. Do you know any stories that describe the fights well? I need some light. I don't remember anywhere that details very well. IngloriusEnd creators' thoughts. 12 comments 0 vote. Lost World. The trio was some distance away from the battlefield. They were looking at that giant and strange monster. The creature was as wide as 4 men and its length was at least 20 meters. Its skin was like big rocks and if it stood still it could be confused with the environment. From the cracks in the rocks a strange kind of plant or parasite was attached to the body and these things glow in the dark with a fluorescent light. Is that a fireworm? Danny asks as she looks at the monster that is focused on its food. I'm not sure, but it must be something like that. Maybe some different kind of giant worms. William replies as he gazes at the monster with a surprised face. You say that because he didn't spitfire. But, maybe he just didn't do it for now. Emily starts talking about her point of view. The only thing I've heard about anything that matches the characteristics is the fireworm. Emily keeps saying what she thought. Yes, me too, but have you ever heard of those other creatures? William tried to explain his point since there were unknown creatures, perhaps that monster was a variant of the well-known fireworms. True, but at least it explains why the environment has changed so much. These things dig through walls. Emily decided to give up her argument. It wasn't something important. Even if it was fascinating to see such a creature, it was still something that scared her. I wonder if there are any more strange things in here. Danny asks as she looks around and approaches William. Probably yes, but still, you needn't be afraid. Remember how we fought. We will take care of you. William tries to reassure her. It was frightening to think that anything they heard might be somewhere in that tomb, and even unknown things were here. What should we call those creatures? Danny asked as she stared at the bodies of the dead monsters. I don't know, maybe Gollum. William spoke as he found those things like Lord of the Rings Gollum. Gollum. What does that mean? I think Ghoul would be better. Emily makes her point. Well, I thought the name Gollum was good for them, but Ghoul is good too. What do you think, Danny? William thought the name Emily spoke was good too. Maybe Danny had some idea for it. Quote. I don't know. Let's think some more, then we'll decide. Danny spoke with some doubt. That would be the name these creatures, they would have needed some more certainty about it. Everyone agreed that they needed more time to decide what the name of this species would be. But for the time being, they would distinguish the small from the big ones with the explanation. Elite, the normal ones were either cubs or some kind of slave, while the bigger ones were the warriors, so for the time being the small ones would be called creatures and the big ones would be called elite creatures, and when the name was decided their qualification would stay with elite, for those bigger ones. They walked again, could not waste time. Danny was already tired, it was necessary to find a place for her to rest an overnight. While several of the creatures were watching them and some were following them, occasionally an elite creature would arrive, but as he was alone he would hide and not follow them. Little other insect-like creatures were around. They were a form of giant cockroaches. These cockroaches were the size of a pigeon. The girls were very disgusted with them. In time some fluorescent mushrooms began to appear on the walls, and from time to time small fountains of water were found on the wall. A mushroom forest. Have you ever seen anything like this? Danny asked while looking at all this sea of mushrooms. There were all kinds and sizes. If they had to be unlucky, even poisons would exist there. Never, Emily answered as she stared at that scene before his eyes. It was somehow magical and beautiful, that image. I've only read it in books, William replied as he acted as the girls did. It was impossible not to marvel at this underground world. The more they walked, the more things were emerging, from monsters to an underground mushroom forest, even a legendary fireworm, or whatever. Maybe they'd find a Hydra or Medusa down here. Well, this wasn't a tale world about Greek myths, but who knows? There must be a good place to camp. Emily talks as he points to a place that was relatively dry and protected. It was a good place indeed. Okay, let's stay there. William agrees and starts setting up the tent. The girls look around to make sure nothing was around. Why does he take a big backpack and two small ones? Danny asked, curious about William's decision. He's silly and wants to act like a pack donkey. Emily answers with malice. William, who is setting up camp, listens and almost falls. I just wanted to be a gentleman. William thinks in reply, perhaps he should abandon his archaic idea and be more modern. The girls started laughing low as they looked at him. He got angry. Danny speaks provocatively. She was learning some tricks from her friend. Yes, but he's cute when he's angry. Emily talks as she looks at William's expression. Danny did not yet know that these two were not blood brothers and sisters. She had not suspected Emily sleeping with William all night. Her room was close to theirs, but it had good sound isolation in the couple's room, and their nocturnal talks were not heard by the young woman. But this information was about to be revealed to her. Not that the couple were going to make their talks while she was watched, but that it was impossible for them not to interact in a more intimate way than a brother and sister were supposed to act. Of course, if you think of Cersei and Jaime, or the ancient Targaryen kings, this behavior was common, but Danny was about to be surprised. How would she react? William planned to make two small tents for them to sleep in. It would be him and Emily, and Danny in the other, at least that's what he thought. We'll sleep together, right? Danny looks at Emily and seeks her confirmation. Even if the girl was already more used to the place and her fear was slowly disappearing, it was still scary to stay in this place. She did not want to sleep alone. I'm going to sleep with Will. Emily speaks with some doubt in her voice and sees the despair that comes in her friend's eyes, and she becomes uncertain if she would do that, but she couldn't sleep away from him anymore. What could she do? Why? I know you always sleep together. I think it's lovely, much better than the way I was with my advisories were, but please, I'm afraid. Danny begged while grabbing her friend's hand. She was too scared to be alone. She thought it was cute that the two of them stayed in the same room every night, but she was scared now. Emily was in doubt. Her protective nature was making her want to talk yes, and thus relieving her friend's fear, but she looked at William, who was shocked by the news and was a little saddened by it. You can sleep with her. William even said that he was accustomed to sleeping hugging his older sister's body. He knew it was better that way. Emily could protect Danny, well, even if it was impossible for anything to come near him without him knowing. Please, Danny spoke as she gained more confidence from William's words, but the decision would still be Emily's, so she looked at her friend with puppy eyes. Emily was about to give in to her friend's request, but then an idea came up. I only accept if it's the three of us together. Emily spoke with a mischievous smile on her face, and she knew Danny was still faking to be angry with William, and in that way, she would force her stubborn friend to be ashamed and stop acting distantly towards him. Danny turned red from her friend's words and looked to William for help. William was surprised by Emily's words, and he couldn't help but get excited about the idea. Could be, he spoke as he avoided Danny's begging look and looked forward to the outcome. Who would say no to that idea? He certainly wouldn't run from that. Danny turned red and looked at her friend. I cannot sleep side by side with a man. Danny tried to put some sense into your friend's head. Who says it's going to be on the side? It'll be you on one side, me in the middle, and Will in the other. Emily talks with a smile of fulfillment. She was excited about the idea of sleeping with them, but she didn't want Danny to be so close to Will. She was jealous after all. A small disappointment sparkled in William's eyes, but he remained silent. If that's the case, fine. Danny decided to accept. Her face turned red, but she'd be close to Emily and away from William, so she was fine, right? Emily smiled and told William to just set up a tent for them. Well, he was already doing that anyway. When they lay down, Emily grabbed William and left a free hand for her fearful friend to hold. Aren't you guys a little too close? Danny, looking at that scene, couldn't help but ask. She felt a bit of discomfort seeing them that way. It seemed very romantic. I can only sleep like this, Emily answered without looking at her friend. Before bed, Danny was sure she heard the sound of a kiss, but she was not sure, and now with the entrance closed she could not see very well. They are strangers, Danny thought before he fell asleep. What brothers slept like that? She's never heard of it before. Actually, she has, but she just couldn't connect the dots because of her tiredness. The other day, they managed to walk a good distance. Some small groups of elite creatures attacked them, but they were easily destroyed. Not a large group with more than 10 was found. They had arrived in a wider place, and because of the large number of flowering mushrooms, they could see that it had a radius of at least 80 meters to all sides, and that at the highest part there were some flying creatures. This is really a lost world. William spoke in wonder at all the things he saw in his path. Look what it is. Emily pointed to a great flying figure. They all looked and saw the thing. When the thing stopped, the little white-haired girl couldn't help but scream when she saw the winged creature. 3/3 laughing face. Hey guys, in case you know any books, novels that describe well the fight and battle scenes, send me, I would be grateful. IngloriusEnd creators' thoughts. 11 comments, 0 vote. Fantastic creatures and where to find them. Dragon. Danny shouted as she looked in surprise at the winged creature. The creature had reptile scales and long wings, its body was robust, but small. Its color was moss green and with gray spots. No, that's a wyvern. Look, it had a beak instead of a mouth. William speaks as he points out one of the simplest differences between the two species. If you look at the head of a wyvern, more like a pterodactyl. Is it a brindled wyvern? Emily asks as she looks in wonder at the creature. Even if wyvern was easily found by those who wished to adventure into the Sothorios region, this was the first time she saw one of these creatures in her life. Beak. I can't see straight. Danny was trying to see the beautiful winged reptile better. Unfortunately, she couldn't see so well. Even if the mood was lit by the blossoming light of this mushroom forest, the human sight suffered because of the low light. It was a smaller, glare-free version of a dragon, but for someone who loved dragons so much, it was already a very interesting thing for her. Well, I think it must be some mutation of brindled wyvern. Maybe they were created or changed because they've been stuck here so long. William answered Emily's questions. It was inevitable that some changes would happen when creatures stay for so many generations in a place so different from their natural habitat. True, they're smaller, about 10 feet tall. Emily agreed with his argument. That would make sense after all. Wyvern was walking through the wall like a bat. Is it hunting something? William eventually spoke his thoughts, and the girls held their breath as they realized it. It wouldn't be us, right? Danny asks with a little discomfort. Even if it wasn't a dragon, it would be sad for her if he attacked them. The result would also be something horrible for her, in which case some of them would die, and she felt sad that somehow this little wyvern wouldn't stand a chance against her 2 demigod bodyguards. Of course, she wouldn't want either of them to get hurt, but the best thing for her was that this wyvern would just leave. Soon the wyvern threw himself and went towards a mushroom that was on top of a big rock. The mushroom was big and long, a little strange actually. When wyvern was on top of the mushroom moved. Is it alive? Emily talks as she looks shocked at the mushroom that seems to stand up and stand guard against wyvern. It was another monster, a humanoid who possessed the body in a similar way to the mushrooms, but with structures that resembled a humanoid being. The head, if it can be said that way, it was a big hat, and wrapped in it there were several other little hats. It was a body that would cause itching and discomfort in someone who possessed trypophobia, because several small and big holes were all over this creature's body, a disgusting sight. The wyvern threw himself on top of the mushroom man, and used his beak to pull large pieces out of the creature's body. The prey, on the other hand, was desperately trying to get rid of his attacker, but unfortunately, this wyvern was very aggressive and much stronger than the mushroom man. What a strange creature, Danny says as she watches that mushroom man. This place is strange, William says as he walks again. Even if it was fascinating to see this predation, there was no reason for them to stay here and waste time. Hey, wait for me. Emily, who watched the predation, didn't realize that William and Danny were already walking. They continued to walk, and along the way new plants and strange little animals appeared. Luckily there were few encounters with the elite creatures, so they didn't waste any time, but William still saw that the first creature they encountered was still following them. What a strange creature. If it were cute I could adopt as my pet, but it's very ugly, William thought as he became suspicious of that creature's strange behavior. A few yards ahead there was a fork in the road, and the one on the left had a door. The whole wall was intact, only a few mosses and mushrooms grew around it, a place that hadn't been dug, like the entrance to the tomb. They obviously realized that this should be the right way, and so they walked in that direction. Danny made a small cut on his finger and the door opened just like the entrance gate. When they entered there was one more small fork. In fact, they were 2 doors that would lead parallel to the front. They would need to choose which way to go. What now? Emily asks while suspiciously looking at those doors. Well, one of those would probably be an easy path, the other a difficult one. William speaks as he searches his book to see if he could get some useful information. What do you mean one easy path and the other difficult? Danny asks without understanding what William meant by that explanation. Basically one of those paths is a trap, Emily answers to her friend. The right way would be without danger. The trap, well, it could be anything. Emily talks while continuing to explain to Danny. And how do we choose? Danny asks while she gets scared of the possibility of entering the trap. That is his job. Emily talks while pointing to William. There was no way to be sure of the way. The best they could do was deduce through some information. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to know first? William speaks as he saves the book. The girls looked at each other and talked at the same time. The good news. Well, the good news is that the trap is not certain death, it's organized in an arena. William speaks as he tries to explain the information he found. Arena. What do you mean? Emily asks, intrigued. Many creatures will be there, in various rooms, and we will have to pass through it. William speaks as he deduces the information. It could be something dangerous, how simple it could be for them. And the bad one? Danny asks. The bad news is that there was a way to know which was the right way, but the clues for that would be on the way here. And as we know, everything here was destroyed and dug. There's no way to avoid that trap, other than to get lucky. William spoke as he spoke the last point he discovered. What the fuck? Emily complains about the problem that has arisen. They were a little silent while they looked at the doors, and then Danny decided to speak. For which one we go? Danny speaks while looking suspiciously at the doors. The two answer simultaneously. The left, speaks Emily. The right, William speaks while pointing. Danny gets a confused face and Emily and William look surprised and talk together again. Left then, William speaks. Right then, Emily speaks while pointing. Danny makes a surprised face and waits for them to speak again. Emily looks at them both and goes toward the right door and opens. We go this way, Emily says and takes a step into the room. The door closes. William is surprised and runs to the door and tries to open it, but it won't open. Danny is paralyzed as she watches the whole event. Emily, are you all right? William screams worried. Yes, but, Emily's voice comes from the other side of the door. But what? William speaks. That's the right way, you'll have to go through the trap. It was noticeable that Emily was sad, but there was nothing to do now. It was unexpected that the door would close in such a short time. All right, we'll meet you on the way out, William answers, trying to reassure her. He turns and looks at Danny. For now it is only us two. He talks while smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. It was a surprise event, a complete accident. They didn't think they'd end up separating like that. And now what will William and Danny find? Hi guys, laughing face. IngloriusEnd creators' thoughts. 13 comments, 0 vote. Download the app for greater interaction. You can chat with me about my writing experience apart from the comments section. IngloriusEnd. Download app now. Dark. William was walking near Danny. The girl was terrified of this place. It was a narrow, dark path. William chose not to light a torch so they could count on the surprise factor and maximize protection. Obviously, it wasn't just so that Danny would hold on to him and not let him get away from her for even a second. Who would do that? It must be a short place. It makes no sense to be too long, and the creatures here must be dead. It's been closed for a long time, and unlike the other places, it hasn't been excavated here. William tried to calm Danny, but the girl was very frightened and only made small sounds in agreement, not even talking. Soon they approached the entrance to the first arena. Now they were going to find out what they should expect to find on this path. The first thing they noticed when entering was that the walls had some strange symbols that glowed in gray and made the place a little visible. The place was about 200 square meters, and it was square with small entrances in the corners that were small for any human to pass through. It was small for a duel. It was probably that reason for being small. It was an attempt to make things difficult. There's nothing here, Danny asked as she whispered. She didn't want to warn anything that was hiding in this place. There's something, but take it easy. It's coming slowly towards us, William spoke as he used his hand that he didn't hold the sword to get through the girl's head. Danny trembled to hear that there was something in this suspicious place, but she was somewhat reassured by William's action, and she nodded in agreement. Will is strong, shouldn't be dangerous. Danny was trying to convince herself and at the same time that some form of courage was beginning to be born inside her. Her will to have the strength to defend herself was growing, and she would soon be unable to control herself and try to overcome her limits. She was not born to be a coward, she was born to be a legend. When this thing comes, I want you to stay behind me and pay attention not to go too far. I won't let anything bad happen to her. William began to explain how she should act. Now that Emily wasn't about to be the second line of defense, Danny needed to be more attentive to her defense. If anything comes near you, you shouldn't be afraid, and then you should try to run toward me. Never run away from me. Close I can take care of it, but far away may be late, you understand. William spoke calmly, and in the end, he was a little harsher. He needed her to do the right thing in case she ran away in despair. Okay, I'll do it right. Don't worry, William. Danny spoke and ended up calling him by the way she thought. She didn't treat him so informally out of her mind. A bit of discomfort surfaced in Danny's young heart. William was focused on the things that were coming out of the little tunnels and didn't realize the intimate way Danny called him, and without him noticing, she was returning to be that friend he had in Pentos. Three things were coming out of the tunnels. It was some plant-based creature. Several yellowish vines started to drag a big red ball that should be the body of the thing. It was a strange creature. It was like a spider, but the whole creature was a living plant form, at least it was what it appeared to be. It resembled a spider because it had several lianas in front of its body, but it was much more grotesque than a spider. The lianas possessed about 2 to 3 meters each, and each of these creatures possessed at least 10 of these lianas. The first creature that managed to bring its body out of the tunnel was the smallest of them, but still, it was much larger than any human. The paws or vines stuck firmly to the ground and brought the creature forward by moving it. Danny wanted to follow her impulse to scream and ask William what that thing was, but she managed to control herself and not shiver in fear, and she focused on the creatures. She wouldn't make things worse than they were. William didn't want to waste time, much less give the other two creatures a chance to join the first. Even without knowing if those things would attack him, he took the initiative to attack. With one quick move they approached, and even though the creature was only a short time away, she used her vines to attack him. The moves were as quick as a soldier human's attack. William was quicker than the vines, attacks and deflected most of them. At the last of the attacks, he used his sword to deflect, and then close to the creature he used it to cut the body of the thing. A loud metal noise hitting something solid was heard. Shit, the sword almost broke. William cursed in his mind as he looked at the result. Even though the sword was of excellent quality and its attack was powerful, the creature suffered only a small injury. In fact, only a small mark of the sword remained on his hard body. With a quick reaction, William decided to kick it against the wall. The kick was strong and the creature was thrown several yards back, but it was not enough. It's too heavy, William thought, surprised as he dodged the vines that were attacking him. The creature was too heavy and his attack didn't do what he wanted. Even though his body grew stronger each day, he wasn't strong enough to be called unstoppable, and now a resilient enemy emerged, a headache. Well, things weren't so dramatic. William realized that his kick had wounded the creature. Apparently it was resistant to cuts, but not as resistant to blunt damage. Knowing what he was supposed to do, William began to move toward the monster plant. The vine blows were more organized and more difficult to dodge, but they were still too slow and he managed to get close, and this time he used kicks and punches. He was trying to break and crush the creature with his blows. No surprise, a noise of something breaking was heard and the creature stopped moving. But before William could celebrate, the other two appeared, and they were bigger than the first. He was supposed to use the same tactic, but it would be more difficult. The vines of these new monster plants were 4 to 5 meters long, and that made him have to be more careful. He still didn't know if they were poisonous. If they were, they could be even more dangerous. Maybe in the last plan, he would have to turn into Lycan, but things were still easy, and it was not necessary for him to use all his assets. This time the whip attacks of these creatures are much more complex. These monsters attack simultaneously, and William needed to use his sword to deflect several attacks. He advanced quickly by making a path in Z to hinder the attacks of these things, and it was working. When he got close enough he struck, but couldn't hit hard enough to kill him and had to retreat and prepare his advance again. The plant monster that was hit got slower and out of its 14 vines only half kept moving, but things didn't get much easier. These things learned and were making more complex movements, and the advance in Z was a bad idea. It wouldn't work again. William advanced while the creatures circulated, and from time to time he changed their movements so that their patterns were not easy to identify and worked partially. A vine ended up hitting him in the arm and tore off his leather armor, and he managed to make a cut on his arm and blood began to flow. Shit, William cursed for being careless. Even with all his advantages he was wounded. Even though the wound would soon heal was undoubtedly a humiliation. But it was justifiable. He didn't train with everything he could do, and that made even the potential there. Things weren't accomplished perfectly. Danny, who was watching from a distance, realized that William had been hurt, and she became apprehensive. Her heart grew weird. She was worried. William became a little angry, and his body grew a little stronger and faster. With a more brutal advance he reached out to the creatures and struck them hard. First a kick ended the life of that wound, and then a flurry of blows in the second, and the thing died. They were strong creatures, no doubt a lethal threat to humans, but they were brutalized by William. Danny came running to him and looked at him worried. "Did you get hurt?" she asked as she searched for the wound. "No, just cut the leather armor. Look." William showed him the spot the monster plant had hit him in. Now it was just vein in the armor and there was no trace of blood or injury. Danny couldn't see very well, so she used her delicate fingers to pass the place to make sure nothing was wrong. Her eyes were filled with tears. She was scared. The blows from those monsters were too many and too fast. She couldn't even see straight. She just listened to the sound of the blows against the ground and it scared her. She was afraid of losing William. She was afraid of losing her friend. Tiny tears flowed down Danny's delicate face while a smile was on her lips. She wanted to say something, but because of her somewhat out of control emotions she couldn't. She just stared at him as tears flowed down her face. What is it? William asked worriedly as he carefully held her shoulders as he looked into the anguished face of his friend. Nothing. Danny managed to speak, but her emotions eventually faded, and she began to cry and hugged William as she resolved. Why is everything so difficult? Danny wondered while all her fear eventually escaped in a burst of tears. She suffered so much, and when the seams seemed to get better they found themselves in a place like this, a place that was so scary, full of strange things that they tried to kill them. She didn't want to suffer anymore. She wanted to be happy and she wanted her friends to go too, but now she couldn't do anything but stand behind them while they were risking their lives and protecting her. She felt guilty for being a burden in this place and hated herself for not having the strength or courage to do anything. Danny spoke as he lifted his face a little to look at William, who looked at her worried. For what? There's nothing you've done. William was trying to console her. She sobbed some more, and if she forced herself to speak, it was so hard for her to speak now. I don't help. I just disturb you. Danny spoke while a strong wave of crying hit her. Why was she weak? Why was she so fragile? She hated herself for being like that. William looked at her in surprise at her speech. He knew more about her than she knew about herself. He imagined it was several things that made the break, but he tried to speak only using the things of the moment. Don't talk like that. I basically forced you to come here for my selfish desires. You're strong to walk in this scary place. William didn't have much skill in that area, but he was trying to comfort his friend. Danny was trying to hold back her cry, but it was hard for her to feel horrible about being the way she was. You're my friends. I have to help. You've already helped me so much. Danny was trying to express some of her suffering, but her emotions were out of control. William was at a loss to know what to do. He didn't know how to help her, and being struck by her emotions, he felt a strong desire to care for her and protect her. This damn personality of his made him take impulsive action. He used his right hand to lift Danny's delicate face a little, and with his left hand, he wiped some of the tears from her face, and then a pair of violet eyes and a pair of celestial blue eyes met, and out of his lucids he acted on the impulse, and their lips met. With that, a wet kiss from the tears of a young girl was born. The sadness of the young woman was eventually forgotten and a little happiness was being born. It was a delicate kiss, but still strong. He was trying to erase her fears. He was trying to say that he would be there for her. And she answered the kiss with anxiety and fear. She longed for affection and was afraid of losing those she cared about. It was a small connection between the soul of someone who by nature was protective, with someone who by nature wanted to be cared for. A spark of a romance was born, but it was not possible to know whether that romance would persist in the face of the uncertainties of such a dark, complex and rude world. 10 comments, 0 vote. Consequences and doubts about the future. It had been a while since they had kissed. Now things were strange between them. Danny somehow felt strange, but she didn't know how to act. She just kept avoiding contact with his eyes. Somehow she felt angry that he took advantage of her weakness, but somehow she was also happy with what happened. It was so confusing to her. Shit. What have I done? Emily's going to kill me. William was a little surprised at his behavior. He had no idea he'd be so impulsive. It was undeniable that he felt something special about Danny, but he was already in some form of relationship with Emily, and now he just complicated things. He had no idea how to fix things. In a moment of impulse he ended up throwing himself on the fire, and things will come out of his hands. He knew that Emily was very jealous, and this world was certainly not an anime. He was definitely screwed. If it was a political marriage, just using benefits to unite people in a polygamous relationship could happen in this world. But an effective relationship with two women for love? He didn't have that hope. Well, maybe a little. Let's go. They must still have a few more things to do, and then we'll meet Emily. William said something random just so they'd keep going. There was no point in them standing here in such a bizarre atmosphere. Danny was walking a little further away from William. She had several thoughts in mind, and she didn't know how to act from now on. Emily as her brother can be so bad. Danny kept thinking that from time to time. William was really screwed. The hallway was getting narrower and the ground was slippery. Some form of slimy liquid was everywhere. Watch out for this slippery one, William warned in a low voice. He was still wondering what would happen when Emily found out. They walked a few more feet until Danny, who was distracted by the things that had just happened, slipped and fell toward the wall. Ouch! Danny let out a little cry of surprise. William reacted quickly and reached out to her, trying to help her avoid getting hurt, but things went wrong. The sound of tearing clothes was heard. Danny had gotten his clothes stuck to the wall, and when William helped her, he ended up pulling her and stealing her. What are you doing? Danny asked in surprise as she held up her clothes so as not to reveal something that he shouldn't have seen. I'm sorry, I didn't want. William tried to defend himself. He acted on his reactions and that ended up creating a little extra problem. What the fuck is going on today? William wondered. Danny was surprised, but she knew it was not his fault. If you turn around, I'll change clothes, Danny spoke while looking for another outfit to wear. William followed her request and waited for her to change. Things were getting weirder and weirder between them, the universe making little intimate things happen from time to time. The path began to get wider, and they found themselves in another small arena. But this time only a few bones were waiting for them. The monsters must have died a long time ago and no one else ended up here. Emily was sitting while she waited for William and Danny, and when she was thinking about getting some sleep since the area she was in was no danger at all, she heard the sound of a door being pushed. I think we're out, William spoke as he looked back at where Danny was. Soon the sound of footsteps was heard and William prepared for the confrontation, but he smelled a familiar smell and then Emily jumped up and grabbed him. You're late, too long. Emily spoke as he hugged him tightly. Some things have happened, and we've been delayed, William responded as he hugged her guiltily. Then she let him go and went to hug her little sister. How are you? Did William do something wrong? Emily spoke as she looked at her friend's clothes. She realized she'd changed her clothes and realized that William's smell was in Danny and the smell of Danny was in William. I slipped and my clothes tore. William held me down so I wouldn't get hurt. Danny replied as she tried to hide her face. She felt ashamed of what had happened between her and William. But it wasn't yet the time for her to tell her friend that her brother was so rude. Quote. Didn't you have any problems here? William asked, trying to deflect the subject. He planned to tell her what happened when they were away from this place. It would be awful to tell her here. He wouldn't do anything else wrong, but he couldn't pretend he hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing happened here, it's almost a perfect place to rest. Emily answers as she hugs him again. This time Danny chose to stay in a separate tent. While they were getting ready for bed, William couldn't hold on and had to count. Emmy, I have something to tell you. William held Emily's hands lovingly and prepared to tell. What is it? You're not resisting and you want to do something naughty. I have to tell you I don't want to spoil it with my friend's ingenuity, she may end up seeing. Emily started wandering around for some random conversation. It's not that. William was thinking of a way to speak to minimize the impact. Danny had a crying crisis and went bad. William began to speak about the circumstances of the facts. What happened to her? Emily asked while showing concern. Relax, I'll tell you everything. William spoke as he tried to lessen her anxiety. William told how things happened and then Danny had the crying crisis. I was affected and something did. I kissed her, William spoke as he looked into Emily's eyes. Emily remained silent, trying to understand what he'd said to her, and then a tear dripped down her cheek. Are you breaking up with me? Emily asks as she is struck by a feeling of sadness. William felt awful to see her that way. No, I'm telling you what ended up happening. I don't want you to go away from me. William speaks as he tries to express his feelings. How can you do that? You're a bastard. Emily talks and walks away from her while tears begin to flow down her beautiful face. I'm sorry. Yes, I am. I know I was wrong, but it doesn't change my feeling about you. William tries to express himself. An excuse couldn't work things out, she'd have to get over it on her own. How dare you say that? You betrayed me. And you cheated on her. You are shit. Emily started fighting with him as her emotions got out of control. You used me and now you want to use her. Emily couldn't understand what he was doing. That's not. That's a lie. I didn't lie to you and I didn't lie to her. I'm telling you, I know I was wrong and I don't expect you to forgive me, I just want you to know that. I don't want to lose you. William defended himself while trying to make his feelings explicit. Then why did you do it? Emily screams and ends up getting Danny's attention. Don't know. I don't know. But it does not change what I feel for you. William speaks while wondering if he had any salvation. He made a wrong, he blamed himself for doing what he did, but there was nothing he could do to go back, he didn't even know if he wanted to go back. Emily kept crying and looking at him. Get out of here, I need some time to think. Emily says as he turns to the other side. Okay, I'm really sorry, but I can't stop myself from feeling what I feel. William speaks in a low voice and leaves the tent. When he comes out, William sees Danny looking at him. She wants to know what happened, but he didn't want to talk now, so he leaves and walks away. A sleepless night awaited him. It was impossible to escape the consequences of his actions. Now he would have to endure the results, but he would fight for what he wanted, he wouldn't give up. The other day they woke up and a strange atmosphere surrounded them. Danny did not understand what was happening, but remained silent. They soon entered a very wide place. It was the boss's room, and there in a side standing asleep was the giant monster over 18 meters long and over 3 meters high, an opponent they would have to challenge. 41 comments 0 vote.